I was taken completely by surprise by the announcement that Nicolas Maduro had been captured and arrested by American Delta forces. With our aircraft carrier, the U.S. Gerald Ford, and its attending flotilla just off the Venezuelan coast, including landing craft to put troops on the beach, Venezuela was then the richest country in Latin America, boasting a GDP of $100,000 per capita. Gross domestic product dropped to $3,000 per capita from $100,000 when he took office. Inflation went to, get this, 130,000% per year. Famine is not uncommon in the countryside of Venezuela. In November of 2025, just last year, Trump offered Maduro the option of resigning his presidency and living in luxurious exile, free of prosecution. On January 3rd, 2026, President Trump ordered Operation Absolute Resolve into action. Instead, we saw a brilliant surgical operation that was not a military act of war, but an arrest of criminals. But now what? I was taken completely by surprise by the announcement that Nicolas Maduro had been captured and arrested by American Delta forces. With our aircraft carrier, the U.S. Gerald Ford, and its attending flotilla just off the Venezuelan coast, including landing craft to put troops on the beach, I expected an invasion. Instead, we saw a brilliant surgical operation that was not a military act of war, but an arrest of criminals. But now what? Welcome, Patriots, to this edition of Common Sense for America. I'm Bruce Rutherford, your host and commentator, coming to you from the beautiful Westwood Golf Club in Houston, Texas. Today, we will predict what is coming next in Venezuela. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like us and give us your rating. If you're watching our podcast, please subscribe to this channel and give us your review. Now, first, a little history. Hugo Chavez led a failed coup in 1992 and was jailed for treason. He got out, and in 1998, he was elected president with 56% of the vote. Venezuela was then the richest country in Latin America, boasting a GDP of $100,000 per capita. Most of the wealth came from the country's oil reserves, which were the largest in the world. Venezuela sold half of its heavy oil to U.S. oil refineries built to refine that heavy, dirty oil. Venezuela was selling about 3 million barrels of oil per day, almost 15% of world consumption. But there was considerable corruption in the Venezuelan economy and very wide economic differences within the population. Chavez won his election promising to end the corruption and the poverty. Chavez immediately implemented needed reforms for the betterment of the people, but he also began to solidify his grip on power with ever more autocratic measures. Eventually, he terminated Venezuela's strong relationship with the U.S. in favor of close cooperation with Cuba, Russia, China, and Iran and Iran's puppets. He fired the professionals that ran the oil industry and replaced them with his political cronies. His socialist policies destroyed the Venezuelan economy. Gross domestic product dropped to $3,000 per capita from $100,000 when he took office. Now, Chavez confiscated private property and nationalized the major industries, including the oil industry. I have a Venezuelan American friend whose family lost their farm and grocery store to government confiscation. The matriarch of the family was allowed to work as a clerk in the grocery store her family once owned. Everything the socialist government touched was ruined. Chavez chose his foreign minister, Nicolas Maduro, as his successor, and upon Chavez's death, Maduro won a very narrow election victory in 2013. The election was widely seen as stolen. From there, everything went from bad to worse. Inflation went to, get this, 130,000% per year. Famine is not uncommon in the countryside of Venezuela. Electric blackouts are common every day. Unemployment is 44% or more. 95% of the country lives in poverty. My friend's mother became very ill. In the hospital, she could not even get the proper medicine. Even toilet paper was impossible to obtain. Maduro expanded Chavez's tracking in drugs to raise cash, partnering with drug cartels. He sold oil in violation of sanctions to Cuba and to others to keep his government running. He allowed Cuba, Russia, and China to use Venezuela as a base for refitting their submarines and for espionage against the United States and against Venezuela's neighbors. In 2000, he was indicted in the state of New York for multiple counts of drug trafficking and gun violations going back to 1999. In November of 2025, just last year, Trump offered Maduro the option of resigning his presidency and living in luxurious exile, free of prosecution. Trump repeated the offer many times and finally lost patience with Maduro's stubborn refusals. On January 3rd, 2026, President Trump ordered Operation Absolute Resolve into action. Delta Force fighters and law enforcement officers, supported by 150 aircraft, captured Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, she was also under indictment in New York. We think 40 Cuban and Venezuelan military personnel were killed in the operation. Now, some Americans were wounded, but none seriously. One helicopter was hit, but completed its mission and returned to base. The flawless operation was carried out on the 36th anniversary of the capture of Manuel Noriega in Panama. Now, the legal basis for these operations is the same in both cases. Both were indicted for crimes against the American people. Neither operation was an act of war, and neither operation required the pre-approval of Congress. Both operations were an effort to spare Americans from the lethal, illegal activities of criminals using their government to commit crimes. Operation Absolute Resolve and Operation Midnight Hammer, which bombed Iran's nuclear facilities, proved the power of the American military. I say the most powerful forces on our planet are gravity, love, laughter, and the American military. But what now for Venezuela? Trump has said the U.S. will run Venezuela for the time being. But Delcy Rodriguez, Maduro's vice president, is now acting president. Diosdado Cabello is still the interior minister in charge of the police. Delcy Rodriguez, Maduro's VP, is now acting president. Diosdado Cabello is still the interior minister in charge of the police. Vladimir Pedrino Lopez is still head of the military. They're rounding up all opposition leaders they can find. We believe there are 18,000 political prisoners in Venezuelan jails right now. Trump also said Maria Corina Machado, who won the Nobel Prize in 2025, is not respected by the Venezuelan people. I know she is loved by the Venezuelan people. She was prevented from running for president by Maduro. Her deputy, Edmundo Gonzalez, ran in her stead and by all accounts won the election. Maduro stole that election, but the Venezuelan people still love Maria Machado. She will win any free election by a landslide, but the Maduro mafia is still entrenched everywhere. Maduro pushed through 66 constitutional amendments to support his dictatorship. Those amendments need to be reversed to bring true democracy back to Venezuela. Now, Trump may see this as a long-term project. He may think he can force the current leadership troika to undertake constitutional and other reforms to set the stage for democracy in 1 or 2 years. Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State and a Cuban American, will undoubtedly take the lead to bring democracy back to Venezuela. But it'll take years, and Maria Machado will be its national leader. Rubio and Trump also have their eyes on Cuba. The Cuban leaders must be losing sleep, fearing what Trump and Rubio will do next. Cuba is an economic basket case that could easily be brought back to democracy by force, supporting a national uprising. But restoring democracy in Cuba after 70 years of communism will be a tough task. People in Cuba have been brainwashed into the culture of communism where we pretend to work and they pretend to pay us. We saw how difficult this problem is when East Germany was reunited with West Germany. Many East Germans could not cope with the stress of having to work at their jobs. That is what communism and socialism do to human beings. Iran, North Korea, and Russia, and even Colombia and Mexico are also rethinking what the U.S. can and what the U.S. will do to them soon. The Chinese are seeing a far more capable U.S. military than they believed existed. I hope this is giving the Chinese reasons to rethink their plans for Taiwan. You can see that Operation Absolute Resolve has implications far beyond Venezuela. It is projecting American power around the globe and striking fear in the hearts of our enemies. It is winning back the respect of our friends. Now, what do you think about Operation Absolute Resolve? What do your friends think? Please tell us your thoughts and those of your friends. We love hearing from you. I hope you'll join us next time when we assess again Ukraine's courageous fight for its survival against Putin's Russian criminals. Until then, God bless you and yours, and God bless America.